Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Andrew Warren, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about a topic that I've been wanting to discuss for a long time now. I've been wanting to make a video on this topic for around a month and a half, and this is all about Bitcoin. And I know a few of you may be skeptics of Bitcoin. That's okay. Everybody has their personal opinion. But in this video, I want to talk about why I am bullish on Bitcoin and why I think there's a lot of opportunity in owning this. And I'll also be revealing some recent purchases that I've made of Bitcoin, including how much I own in Bitcoin currently and what I actually use to buy Bitcoin personally. Maybe some of the details mentioned in this video will be helpful for those of you out there that are interested in learning about Bitcoin and also just learning about dipping your toes in the water and how to get started with purchasing Bitcoin. So as always, of course, if you appreciate videos like these where I share what I believe are opportunities, whether it's with Tesla stock or something like Bitcoin or something else, if you appreciate that transparency and enjoy me letting you all know what I think about certain things, please make sure to smash that like button. And before we get into this video, by the way, I am using the desktop version of Coinbase for what you see on the screen right here. But before we get into this video, if you are interested in starting out and buying a little bit of Bitcoin, for the people starting out and just trying to get familiar with all of this, I would recommend using Coinbase for your first small purchase of Bitcoin. Keep in mind, none of what I say in this video is to be considered financial advice. This is simply me just sharing my thoughts and opinions and ideas. But if you are going to buy Bitcoin anyways, and if you're looking for a clean interface to use, kind of like how I use Robinhood just because it's so simple to use, it's aesthetically pleasing, it's nice to look at, I would actually recommend using Coinbase for your first $100 purchase. And that is because you can use my referral link in the description below. And with using my link and with that $100 purchase, you'll also get an extra $10 free in Bitcoin on top of that. And the reason that I'm recommending this is because with any purchase with Bitcoin, you're likely going to have to pay some sort of fee. Now, Coinbase is a lot more expensive than using things like Coinbase Pro and Binance US and things like that. But for that first $100 purchase, it's actually going to be cheaper to use my referral link to Coinbase because you'll get that extra $10 in Bitcoin, which will not only cover the purchase fees for making that purchase, but you'll get a little bit extra in Bitcoin as well with that $10. And that will actually make it cheaper than even with making a purchase on Coinbase Pro, which is what I use mainly right now. I also use Binance US because the fees on that are super cheap, but I would actually recommend using Coinbase for that first $100 purchase of Bitcoin just because you get that extra $10 free on top of that. And at the end of the day, that actually makes it cheaper than purchasing Bitcoin on any exchange that I'm aware of currently regarding the fees of making that purchase. In addition to that as well, here's another opportunity that I would really emphasize taking advantage of. I don't get anything whatsoever for recommending this specifically right here. I will get $10 in Bitcoin as well if you use my referral link for that $100 purchase of Bitcoin. But for what I'm emphasizing right here, I don't get anything whatsoever. It's basically free money with minimal effort. And I always like to tell people about this because I think everyone should take advantage of it. But there is a tab in Coinbase called Earn Rewards, and once you click on that, it'll give you options to fill out these surveys or quizzes where you can get a certain dollar amount in different cryptocurrencies. In total, after completing all of these quizzes, you get around like $36 to $40 in different cryptocurrencies, and you can convert all of that over to Bitcoin. So you have that option to convert around $36 to $40 that you got for free in these cryptocurrencies over to Bitcoin. That's what I did, and I'm honestly so surprised that they're offering this because $36 to $40 in Bitcoin eventually could end up being a lot of money. Just wanted to emphasize that as well because I think some people don't know about that. And also just to have transparency on my portfolio currently, I have a little bit on Coinbase, around $792 in Bitcoin, but most of it is stored on Coinbase Pro. If we take a look over here, we have Coinbase Pro with a portfolio value of $7,182.55 in Bitcoin. And then I have around, I think, $2,000 in Bitcoin on Binance US. In regards to my first purchase of Bitcoin, I actually made my first purchase on December 16th of 2020. The biggest barrier for me with Bitcoin was figuring out the ideal exchange to use for me. As you all know, I love Robinhood, I love the clean interface, and I'm also always looking for those cheap fees in terms of purchasing Bitcoin. And that's when I finally figured out that I should use Coinbase Pro and Binance US because of those cheaper fees, because on Coinbase, the fees are actually a lot more than using Coinbase Pro. So I would say up until that purchase on December 16th, that was kind of the barrier for me in purchasing Bitcoin, which was just figuring out the exchange that I wanted to use and figuring out one that has reasonable fees and things like that. But I can clearly remember back on Thanksgiving Day, there was a significant discount on Bitcoin, and that was the point in time where I actually had money to buy Bitcoin, but I didn't have an exchange account. And on that day, I knew it was a good opportunity to buy Bitcoin, but the issue was the barrier of actually having an exchange to use and having that instant deposit access where I didn't have to wait on the bank forever to take advantage of that discount. So I ended up finally making an account. When I made my first purchase, I think it was at around the price of $20,685. And recently, we've even had Elon Musk himself put hashtag Bitcoin in his bio, and he talked about Bitcoin on Clubhouse as well. But I just wanted to emphasize that it's not just me following the wave on Elon Musk or anything like that. Like I said, I've been buying it since around mid-December, but it's awesome to see Elon Musk even talking about this as well. And when talking about Bitcoin, he stated that he was possibly late to the party, but I actually don't think anyone who buys Bitcoin right now is late to the party. If you can have that long-term vision and deal with all of the volatility, even if it drops 30% in one day or something like that, as long as you can get over that and have faith in the long-term vision of Bitcoin, that's what matters at the end of the day. But in terms of the reasoning for why I buy Bitcoin, I think one of the best explanations for that is the fact that at the end of the day, when we think about it, what is the better alternative? The only options that we have right now, aside from Bitcoin, is the US dollar. And the issue with the US dollar is that more and more is being printed every day. I mean, just think about the $1.9 trillion stimulus package that is being discussed right now. That's just more and more money being printed, meaning the cash that you have right now will eventually lose more and more value as more money is being printed. And that's the issue, especially nowadays. As time goes on, our money is just being worth less and less and less. And with the interest rates in our savings account being little to none, there's really no reason to hold cash in a bank account when it is being devalued significantly. And that's something that I've discussed in the past on this channel as well in regards to an emergency fund. We commonly hear people recommend having an emergency fund in your bank account around like $10,000 to $30,000 in cash. And I've told you all before, I basically use my stock market portfolio as my emergency fund. If I end up needing some money, I'm willing to take the risk of withdrawing that money when the stock market is down. Obviously, I hope that I never have to sell any of my stock, but I don't see a reason to keep $10,000 to $30,000 in a bank account where I'm basically gaining no money on it whatsoever. And especially if we take a look at Tesla stock over the past year, I'm so glad that I decided not to keep a bunch of cash in that account and just let it grow at a very, very small rate. Referencing back onto Bitcoin, that's kind of my point here. There's really not a reason to have a significant amount of cash in a bank account unless you're just waiting for a nice opportunity and you think the stock market is going to crash sometime soon, or you're saving up for a house or something like that. I just don't see a reason to have significant amounts of cash in my bank account just because of the fact that more and more money is being printed every day, and the money that we have right now will eventually be worth less later on, and that spending power will be less significant. In regards to all of this as well, with the recent $600 stimulus check that we got, I put that straight into Bitcoin. I put all $600 into Bitcoin, and I feel like that was just the right thing to do, because at the end of the day, if we think about it, that $600 is just resulting in our cash that we have currently being devalued later on because of more and more being printed. After I maxed that Roth IRA out, I was actually going to just pile up cash until it was tax time and go ahead and pay off my tax bill, but I just saw a lot of opportunity with Bitcoin, and I'm really happy that I took advantage of it back when it was around $20,000 to $21,000 per Bitcoin, and I've already made a significant amount so far. Like with the $800 that I have on Coinbase right now, that was from a $400 investment in Bitcoin, so I've already made around 100% in gains just based on this Coinbase portfolio that I have here. Personally, I just see so much opportunity in the future with Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, in my opinion, Bitcoin is the best alternative because we have no other options. With any country's currency, there is the option to print more and more and more and make what is currently existing worth less later on, and that is something that does not happen with Bitcoin, and we have full transparency in terms of the future of Bitcoin and all of the mining that goes on. And Bitcoin, at the end of the day, to me, it represents personal freedom, the option to disengage from the lack of control that we have in the financial system right now. And we commonly hear people refer to Bitcoin as a Ponzi scheme, scheme. And my response to that would be, just wait until you learn about the history of the US dollar. I think a lot of you, if you're not familiar with all of that, you would probably be mind blown if you just did a little bit of digging. And if you are trying to learn a little bit more about Bitcoin, a few people that I would recommend paying attention to, you have Michael Saylor. He's the CEO of a publicly traded company known as MicroStrategy. He's very well known for converting some of his company's extra cash to Bitcoin. He's already made a nice profit on that so far, and I would kind of compare him to Cathie Wood and how she's super bullish on Tesla stock. Michael Saylor is like the Cathie Wood of Bitcoin. He's definitely one of the legends in the Bitcoin community. You also have Russel Okung, who is an NFL player who got paid in Bitcoin. He's always talking about topics regarding Bitcoin on Twitter. Definitely recommend following him as well. Then you also have Nick Carter, who's someone I recommend following on Twitter as well. I'll leave all of these links in the description to some of these accounts because I think they have a lot of great things to say, and maybe they'll open up your mind a little bit more about the topic of Bitcoin and about that as an option. In regards to my level of bullishness on Bitcoin, I do think there is a possibility that it could eventually 100 times the value that it is at currently. If we reach that point of wide adoption and people legitimately using it as a store of value, and with people recognizing that their country's currencies are only being devalued over time as more and more is being printed, then there's a big opportunity for widespread adoption. Some people refer to that as hyper-Bitcoinization. That's when Bitcoin is really taken seriously as a store of value or currency, and they view that as the ultimate financial transaction system or store of value. Now that's likely far away, and the issue with that is that if it gets to that level, in the meantime, there is the possibility of the government cracking down on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. That's certainly a concern. I think that is the most legitimate concern that exists right now with Bitcoin. Quantum computing can be another concern as well, but at the end of the day, I think there is a lot of opportunity for growth with Bitcoin, and even if it's just a small part of one's portfolio, I think it is worth holding. I'm personally someone who would like to expand their position in Bitcoin. I still plan on buying Tesla stock and maxing out the Roth IRA every year for that as well, and buying more of Tesla stock, but I'm also focusing on Bitcoin right now. Don't worry, I'm still very, very bullish on Tesla stock. I'm not abandoning it whatsoever, but I'm also recognizing other opportunities right now, and Bitcoin is just one of those opportunities that I think there's a lot of potential in. And the interesting thing about Bitcoin is that, like I said, it is pretty polarizing, so with it being polarizing, there's a lot of opportunity there, and when we see volatility within Bitcoin, there's a lot of opportunity for discounts, and I think we still are in the early stages of Bitcoin. The interesting thing about this as well, at least in recent times, it seems like there's a large focus on institutional investors with Bitcoin compared to Tesla stock, like how there was a major retail investor focus on that stock, and then the institutional investors started flowing in as well. Of course, there was a lot of retail investors with Bitcoin, and then now institutional investors are starting to adopt it. But with the recent Bitcoin crash a few years ago, I think a lot of retail investors exited this as an investment, and that's when the institutional investors started to flow in. And I think a lot of the retail investors right now are missing out, and the institutional investors are the ones actually recognizing the potential. So there's kind of a difference, I think, with Bitcoin between like how we view Tesla stock as a major retail investor focus, and Bitcoin, of course, started out with a lot of retail investors, but it seems like more right now, at least what I've seen recently, a lot of institutional investors are piling onto this and taking advantage of this compared to the amount of retail investors buying Bitcoin. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with that as well, because there's a lot of investors that aren't going to buy Bitcoin because they simply think, why would I buy Bitcoin when I can buy something like Tesla stock or another stock in the market, or buying gold or something like that, where you can actually expect a return on your investment based on the future of the business. Like with Tesla stock, depending on their revenues, you can justify that purchase and your investment in that company based on the market cap and the things like that. Whereas with Bitcoin, there is kind of that common agreement where everyone finds value in purchasing it. And in comparison to publicly traded companies, it can't be justified by certain revenues and things like that in the typical sense. Considering that, however, that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity, because there's a lot of money flowing into the stock market right now. There's a lot of money flowing into buying homes and things like that. Everybody's looking for places to spend money, and I think they're being a little bit distracted on these other things compared to having this option of Bitcoin. I think it will eventually be widely adopted. That may take some time, but I'll be perfectly okay with that, because that'll just give me more time to buy this at a cheaper price. But anyways, I just wanted to share this with you and talk about Bitcoin a little bit and why I'm bullish on it. I really believe it is the ideal alternative to what we have right now. now in which the cash that we have is eventually going to be devalued as more money is being printed, and I think that's a legitimate concern. Some people may never wake up to that fact, but that's where I find opportunity in buying Bitcoin. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to smash that like button, and definitely feel free to take advantage of my referral link. I'll leave my referral link in the description below for Coinbase if you would like to take advantage of that. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.